There's a new study out about unemployment and suicide from two London School of Economics researchers and a University of California, San Francisco epidemiologist. And what they found, I'm going to go ahead and file under the duh category. They said, quote, suicide rates have long been known to correlate with economic conditions and the unemployment rate. But the new research finds that higher unemployment insurance payments dull the connection between economic factors and suicide. So they looked at 40 years of data from different states in the U.S., and of course what they got from different states is, because it varies state to state how they dole out unemployment insurance benefits. So some states are more conservative with it, some states are more progressive with it, and they were able to look at the states that are harsher and the states that are more lenient and see how that affects the suicide rate and how other economic factors affect the suicide rate. And look, to me, it makes perfect sense. Because throw out the idea that this is a study, throw out the science behind it, which is something that we should never do, by the way, because science is always right. Just, it is by definition. It's a procedural thing on how you find the truth. But just think about it from an individual to individual level, okay? That if we're in a society that has 25 people, right, and 3 of them are struggling, they don't make enough money to survive, they don't have employment, there is no employment for them, and if all of us, all the other people who are employed, if we all go up and each give this person $1, or we each give them 50 cents, okay? What is more likely, that that person is going to commit suicide when they're totally ostracized and they have no money, or when you give them a little bit of money to sustain themselves and to kind of coast until they can get a job or until a job opportunity presents itself? When are they more likely to commit suicide? When they have absolutely nothing, or when they have the money afterwards? This is why I file this under the duh category. Obviously, there's a bigger risk of depression, a bigger risk of other mental health problems, and a bigger risk of suicide before they have any money or anything to sustain their lives. I mean, this is obvious, man. But the reason why not very many people talk about this, and this isn't brought up often, is because this has other things that go hand in hand with it that are quite uncomfortable and that people don't want to say because it reveals a very dark truth, a very black and white factor of reality, a very right and wrong factor of reality, that in many respects, progressive policies, and I'll even be kind to the conservatives and say moderate progressive policies, not communism or socialism or anything crazy like that, but just social safety net programs, right? They are superior. More people will die in a society, and in this case by suicide, if you don't have an efficient, effective social safety net that can relieve people's economic struggles when times are rough. And the way the progressives look at it, it's very simple, man. We understand that it can't just be on the individual because there are systemic things at work in a capitalist system. There's always going to be a certain unemployment number, not because people are lazy, but because it's the nature of the beast. You're always going to need people to work jobs that are relatively low-paying jobs. Okay, you're always going to need cashiers. You're always going to need janitors. You're always going to need all different types of things. You're always going to need people who work high-paying jobs, et cetera, et cetera. So even if that conservative idea were applied that it's always on the individual and they need to work as hard as they can and then they'll make it. But wait, that's not true because we're always going to have people making minimum wage even if everybody works as hard as they can. And there's always going to be unemployed people even if everybody works as hard as they can. Did you know that, especially during the recession, there was like 5 people for every 1 job opening? So the math just didn't work. There are going to be unemployed people. So then the question becomes, either from a moral perspective, we say fuck you and we let them starve, or we have, some sort of minimal safety net where there's food stamps so they can get something to eat and not die and they could feed their kids. There's there's Medicaid so they can get health care. There's unemployment insurance so they can, for a certain amount of time, they can sustain with, again, at least a minimal standard of living. So to me, I think this points to what we already knew and what is fairly obvious, that a progressive political system with strong social safety nets, it is superior. And no, it doesn't breed dependence. It doesn't make you lazy. If it did, the fraud rate in these programs would be through the roof. But like we've seen time and time again, there was a USDA study. Only 1% of people on food stamps are using it unjustly, are using it wrongly. So there's your fraud rate. 1% of people using the different social safety net programs, they're gaming the system, if you will. 99% of the time, it's people who legitimately need it, and it's not an enviable situation to be on using the social safety net anyway. So people are going to try to get off of it, but it needs to be there to protect us from becoming an incredibly barbaric society.